Welcome back to Daily Flash. I'm Mitch English. In today's Parenthood, we are going to be talking about death. There's no doubt, there's no topic more difficult to discuss with your child, regardless of their age, than what death is all about. And parents are likely grappling with that grief themselves, which actually can make the conversation even more difficult. Joining us now is parenting expert Katherine Sellery. She's got more on this topic. I'm so glad we got to talk about this. This is something that, in my life, I've had to experience. My brother was killed when I was a teenager, and then my son was murdered when just less than about 6 years ago. So I had been on both sides of this, and I did know I took a lot from what I had to go with, and I'm like, I'm not putting that on my kid. There's nothing worse ever than losing a child, and you never want that. But you still have to face it, and it's something that you have to teach your kid. Which is, I was able to use my experiences, but there are so many parents out there, and I hope there will be even more that never have to go through this. Very tough topic, wouldn't you agree?
Oh, it's so hard. I mean, it's one of those where you almost don't want to talk about it.
Right.
It's that hard, right?
But talking brings out so much. I think it actually helped me as a parent when I had that discussion with my kids, because my worry was projected onto them, and then once we had a dialogue with it. I don't want to take away from your message that you have here, but how do we deal with it? What's the best way?
So, a lot of it starts with really deciding, what is the maturity of my child?
Right.
So whether your child's in pull-ups or passing their college exam, chances are good that they've already been introduced to the concept of death. However, how we discuss it with our children depends so much on their maturity level, which really sometimes doesn't have to do with age. It just has to do that little young soul or that older one who's still immature. So really understand that before diving into it. Ask a lot of questions. Get to know more about, what's going on for them and how it makes them feel.
Is a safe question to ask to them? It's like, well, what do you think death is about? I mean, just open it up, being just a broad stroke, or?
Absolutely. What do you think it's about? What's going on for you right now? When you think about it, what comes up? And just let them freely express, because there's so many concepts out there. Right. And so just letting them air that and giving you a great starting point for the conversation.
Okay. Now you say use empathy, but no euphemisms. Explain that.
Yeah. So typically the most difficult part for children to grasp is the permanence, right? Yeah. And that's something that we all go through as a parent, a caregiver, children alike. So avoid that euphemism that we hear sometimes, because they're dishonest. They can lead to unreasonable associations or fears, things like grandma's gone to sleep.
Okay.
So that can cause a child to begin to fear sleep. Right? You just don't want to say that. So in times like these, children need somebody that they can trust and lean on. So, but the intention behind these euphemisms or expressions is good natured, but they can lead to mistrust between you and your child, which is the last thing you need.
Yeah. And, I think there's nothing worse than watching a parent cry or a father cry and that sort of thing. And so I would imagine a child would be very reluctant to actually want to bring it up. So it's really the one that has more maturity, I imagine, is to start talking about it. What's your next step about that?
So, understanding the manifestations of grief, but even just I want to touch on that for a moment. Seeing mom and dad cry, seeing them allow their emotions to flow is one of the healthiest things you can do.
Oh, really?
Right. Oh, absolutely. Because now I'm not afraid to let my own feelings be expressed. There's nothing wrong with tears. Tears are part of the healing process.
Right.
And so if you and your child can sit there and grieve the loss of a friend, a relative, it's beautiful. So I just want to say that's a great thing. But grief manifests itself differently depending on the age and the maturity of the child. So after that significant loss, it's not uncommon, right?
Yeah.
And very common for young children to become confused, resistant. Some get really clingy, and they revert back to more childlike behaviors. That's not uncommon at all. It's also not uncommon for them to be nonchalant and just kind of brush it off like it's not a big deal and there's nothing going on there, because it's it really is uncommon, thank goodness, that, a lot of times it's not something that kids have had any experience with. And that means that they just don't have any experience. Plus, there's all these crazy ideas about it when really it is a normal, natural part, usually, depending, unfortunately, your situation is so tragic, but if it's just old age or something along those lines, then we need to just celebrate the life.
All right, there's going to be tons of questions, though, right, Katherine?
Yeah. Yes, and teenagers, of course, they're going to have different experiences than the little kids who it might manifest for them in a headache or stomach cramps. And tears, sadness, all of that. It can come in waves. It can be there sometimes and not other times. Where for teenagers, they have the capacity to understand death, what surrounds it, but they haven't developed the skills necessary to regulate their emotions around it. And so the subsequent manifestations of grief in the teenagers can be more severe. So just keep an eye out, for reckless, abnormal behaviors, fighting, social distancing, sexual promiscuity, drug, alcohol abuse. All of those things could actually be some guilt, because that's also common.
Yes.
As they try to work their way through feeling responsible. Is it something I did? Something I should have done better? So these are conversations that can trigger feelings about their own mortality and abandonment. So being present in these times of loss.
This is a
as children and
big
people,
discussion.
yes,
Katherine,
going through this.
Thank you so much. More information, free parenting book. Go there right now, get more details, and we appreciate you joining us again. Thank you.
You bet.